All right. Hello, hello. We're here.
We made it.
We made it.
Sorry we're late. We things come up at the most unopportune times.
Inopportune?
Inopportune, not the right times. I was not an English major, clearly. I got a call that was, I don't know, partially emergent.
It sounded like the end of the world is what it sounded like.
Yeah, it was definitely emotion heightening, and had to deal with it really quickly for the 24 unit insurance. Flood coverage, fun stuff, but crisis averted. We're good. Everything's back on track. We just kind of derailed the whole train for 5 seconds and then just booped it back on the track. So we're okay. But that is why we are late. And that is why I'm a little bit adrenaline filled right now.
But it segues nicely into today's topic.
It does.
Because
actually,
emotions were really, really high for a moment until we took a step back, took a breath, and brought logic and reason into the conversation.
Yeah. And
that's what we're talking about today.
I was going to say, if you didn't guess, that is exactly what we're talking about today.
It's also in the title.
Using, I don't know, maybe some people just
don't read it.
Don't read and just look at our faces. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, we're talking about logic and reason today. If you are new to our power lunches, welcome. If you are a returning viewer, welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in every week. As usual, this is really casual. We will talk about what we have to talk about and maybe things we didn't know we had to talk about.
Yeah.
And if you have anything that you want to add to the conversation, any experience that you want to, and again, this is all from our experience. This is just talking about stuff that we've gone through as real estate investors. So if you have an experience that you want to add to it, some insights, maybe throw them in the chat. We can talk about them.
Comment down below.
Yeah, it's supposed to be interactive because, it's either that or you just listen to us banter away. So
yeah, if you're here, make sure you like the stream, share it with your friends as well. Anybody that you think might get some value from this. And yeah, make sure you comment as well because we want to know you're here. Say hi, and give us your input.
Yeah,
for sure.
And today is extra special because we are going to be giving you a sneak peek on something that is coming up that we are going to be doing, and it's really exciting. We just got kind of most of the final information on it
this morning.
Was it last night? I don't know. Sometime in the last 24 hours, and we're really excited to share it. So stay tuned for that.
We'll be sharing it at the end of today's session.
Yeah.
At the end of lunch.
At the end of lunch, yes. Okay. Power lunch today. Yeah. Logic and reason.
Yeah.
I still feel a little bit of adrenaline from what just happened.
And this is why logic and reason is so important, is what's happening here.
Yeah. And I think a lot of this, obviously we talk about real estate for the most part during these lives, but I think...
Do we talk about anything else?
I think we do.
In general, not just on these lines.
No, okay. We always talk about real estate, but I think a lot of the topics can translate into other areas of life. And I think this one is a really good example of a topic that can translate into, obviously it's a big part of real estate, but it's also a big part of business, and can also, I think, almost translate into some kind of daily life type stuff.
For sure. Well, I mean, it's a big part of my daily life.
Logic.
I live my life with logic and reason.
Yeah, there's also
I do have emotions. I'm just more logical than the average person, I think.
Yes, Jeff loves his logic and reason. I mean, I do too. I like presenting the logic and reason, but Jeff is like an extreme logic and reason person. If you're an IT person, shout out to you because you know what Jeff's talking about. I'm also like, I like my logic and reason. I like things to make sense, but I'm a little bit more on the like emotional side. and just like the big picture, the excitement, get things done. Who cares about the details kind of person.
So what happened right before this with the insurance debacle, I guess we'll call it, I was on a coaching call. I didn't know any of this was happening. I knew that Dakota was on the phone. I could hear faint, but she came down
like this,
like shaking. I feel like I was just like, okay, I hear that there was this issue, but like, what's happening out of this? There was never I never really got too. I mean, obviously, I'm feeding off of you a little bit, raise the heart rate a little bit, but I think for the most part, it's just like, okay, but what are we doing about it?
Yeah.
Right. And that's really what it comes back to, is just chill out, take a step back, and think about this.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where obviously logic and reason makes things a little bit easier, because you are actually able to act on things from a cool head and a cool perspective and actually figure things out. Yeah. It's really hard to...
I was going to say logical perspective, but it's
quite literally.
Define the word using the word.
Perspective.
Yeah.
It's really hard to think logically when there are a lot of emotions happening. It's very hard to be... Like, obviously, creativity, there is emotion that there's emotion that's injected into creativity. But I think if you have a lot of like negative emotion, a lot of like stuff that's weighing you down, a lot of anxiety, and a lot of that comes from not using logic and reason and just letting emotions heighten. Yeah. It's really hard to be creative. So even if you're just thinking of it from like a creativity and advancement of your business perspective, the logic and reason can actually be really helpful in that creativity, because if you're in a space where emotions are too heightened, it's really hard to be creative. So
yeah, and then when you have two parties that are almost feeding off of each other, it's like a spiral, right? So you're both going to be more emotional, and then it just ends up kind of building on top of that, and nobody gets anywhere at that point.
Yeah, and I think
running around in circles.
A big part, and if we start kind of, I guess, to bring it into the real estate world, a lot of people, there's a lot of emotion around buying real estate, I think, for the average person. For the most part, like when the average person thinks of buying real estate, they think of buying their single family home, their forever home, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of emotion that surrounds buying real estate for the average person. And it's really hard often to switch that off when you become an investor, because you really have to stop that kind of natural emotion that you have towards real estate, where you want to love it, you want to love the paint colors, you want to love the color and the type of cabinet you have, and the handles and the pulls and all that kind of stuff, and you need to step away from that and almost remove that piece from buying real estate properly. And it's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And then even when it comes to location, right? You want to, like, location is super important in real estate, and I'm not saying that it's not, but you want to be a little bit more logical about that location. It doesn't have to necessarily be in your ideal location to where you would live.
Yeah, or maybe like, you have a super emotional attachment to your hometown, but maybe your hometown isn't the best place to invest. So this is something like I wanted to invest in a place called Kenora, because that's where a big part of where I grew up. Thunder Bay, I think, is actually a good place to potentially invest.
Yeah.
But we talked about Kenora a lot because I have a very emotional attachment to Kenora. And when you step back and actually look at that town as far as investment goes, there is a huge demand actually right now for rentals. But the fundamentals of the town are like, it relies on tourism. If they ever lose tourism, I don't know what that town's going to do.
Yeah, and I mean, the way that, we don't have to get into Kenora.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's multiple reasons on why it doesn't really make sense for us to invest.
Yeah. So in that area, for me, that was removing an emotional component to it and having to step back and be like, okay, does this actually make sense as a place to invest?
But that wasn't easy either.
No, it wasn't.
Because you were hung up on Kenora for a little bit. I feel like it was almost a little bit of prying away to be just me bringing it to a lot of logic and reason on why it doesn't necessarily make the most sense to have an investment there, to bring you out of that emotional state into, okay, yeah, no, it does make sense not to invest, I guess. It doesn't make sense to invest there.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is tough to get out of that space, but once you're able to step back and actually look at the logic and reasoning and remove that emotional piece, it can get a lot easier. And it's really important when you're doing business, right? Because if you follow that the emotional reasoning behind it, it can get you into a lot of trouble. Because if you're just doing things because you love love the idea of owning a place in a certain area, or you love I don't know, the go back to like the colors of the kitchen or whatever. Like you love the kitchens when you walk in, but when you actually look at the numbers don't make sense. You might start to try to fudge things to make it make sense.
Even just you love the idea of owning a multifamily building.
That's a
right?
great example.
Right? You could be just so emotionally attached to the idea of owning a multifamily building that you start to, as Dakota said, fudge the numbers to make the deal work because you are so emotionally attached to buying that building or that specific building or whatever because you've fallen in love with the idea of it that you forget the business side of it, or that you start to sharpen the pencil or fudge the numbers so that the deal works.
Yeah, I had a student yesterday that I was talking to about this, and she was very proud of herself because the first, and this is something I see a lot with people who are just getting into real estate investing, a lot like you said, they really want that first deal. So they get really emotional about maybe the first deal that looks like first property that looks like it might work. And they get so attached to like, something, a red flag is sent at them and they're like, oh, but like, maybe I can figure this out. And I think there is kind of a fine line between getting creative to make something to create the deal, and then the emotional side where it's like even the creativity isn't going to make this a good deal.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to differentiate that. And I think that comes with a little bit of experience and the experience of being able to take the emotions out of it. But that was kind of a struggle that she had with her first deal, that she was like, maybe if we like do these things, like maybe
if I manage it for free and I go and cut the grass and I go and remove the snow and I go and I clean it and I do all the property management for free, then all of a sudden it works.
Yeah, but is that a good business?
Is that realistic? Are you going to actually want to do that and do it for free?
Yeah.
Probably not.
So it was very hard for her to get through that on the first property that she did. And she ended up letting it go, which as a coach, you never want to say like, I don't know, you don't, don't do that, bad deal, walk away, because you're kind of there to guide. You're not there to like set, like, this is how it's done. Yeah. This is how it is. So you have to do like your guiding through it, but she ended up walking away from that one. And then we were talking about another deal, and she was like, yeah, she could see the red flags clearer because she had gotten past that idea of using the emotions, and she was looking at it from a logic and reason perspective and was able to actually see the red flags, assess the red flags, say, is this something that I really want to be dealing with, or do we move on to the next deal? Right. So, and she even said herself, she was like, I'm really proud of myself because I got kind of past that emotion of getting my first property and having a hard time letting it go on the first one. And now it's easier to look at it from a logical perspective and really assess those red flags.
Yeah, good for her.
Yeah, it was like a
proud coaching moment.
Yeah, it's like those breakthrough moments where you're like, yes, and you don't have to be like, don't do it, right? Because I don't know, it's hard to do that as a coach, because you want them to have their own journey still. You want to guide them, but you still want them to have their own journey.
Yeah, I mean, you could say something like, oh, it's probably not a deal that I would do because of these reasons. Again, bringing it back to logic and reason, and getting all emotions out of it. So
yeah, exactly. Even though sometimes emotions, though, they'll even that red flag, they'll la 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 la. But yeah, I think once you get past that idea that there is, and it still creeps up every once in a while, you still get those little tings of emotion. Absolutely. I think no matter what. So don't feel bad if you're like, I've been in investing for a while and I still get those little emotion tings.
We're not robots either. We want to be emotional, but we just want to make sure that we're emotional about the right things. I think, and that we're not letting the emotions really drive the bus.
Yeah. Or even if you're not you're getting emotional about what we'll call the wrong things, like maybe the wrong property you're trying to make, something you've been working on for a long time that now you need to walk away from. I think recognizing that it's an emotion that's keeping you in that deal and not logic and reason. I think having the emotion is okay. It's just recognizing that it's not properly placed.
Yeah. Know when to walk away, know when to run.
Yeah, something like that.
I think The Gambler is written
twang.
is written based off of logic and reason.
Hey, it might be. So yeah, logic and reason, super important when you're looking at a deal, super important when you're running your numbers. Like you said, you don't want to be tweaking things to make things work. It's also a big part of like influence, right?
Yeah.
Like as a real estate investor, you want to become someone who is influential. Influential, because you want to be, especially if you're working with partnerships, you want to be someone who can bring people together and use that influence in a very positive way to create a lot of opportunity for yourself, for other people, for the community. And the way to do that not really easily, in an easier way, is to become an influential person. Yeah. And
even when it comes to negotiating a deal, right? You're using influence to negotiate, to essentially sell yourself as the buyer of this property.
Yeah. And obviously, like, to be influential, you want to be liked. You want people to like you. You want people to, you want to be doing things that people like look up to you and doing them in a good, positive way. And a lot of that also comes from logic and reason, right? Like, people, you want to have that emotional side where people are, I want to say attracted to you, not like in a physical way. I mean, like in an aura way, we'll call it. People are attracted to you. They like what you're doing. They want to follow you. But you also have to make sense, because if you're just like spewing stuff that doesn't make any sense, and at the beginning it sounds good, it sounds quick, like people are attracted to it, that only lasts so long. So you need to be throwing in some logic and reason there to make people be like, okay, I like this person. I like the oomph that they're giving off, and they actually have some substance.
Yes.
Which is the logic and reason.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why we do well. We're a good pair.
Because I have logic and reason.
Yeah. I'm the
well, what about you?
Woo. I don't know. I'm just here. I'm just the fireworks. That's all. Right. But yeah, it's really important, again, in the world of real estate, because having that ability to attract people to you is how you're going to create those partnerships, and how people are going to want to get involved in what you're doing. Because you don't want to be someone who's like, follow me, because it's not going to work. Yeah. And a lot of that, again, comes down to having the substance, having the logic and reason. We had something very interesting happen to us recently, and not just today. Today, I guess there's always interesting things happening.
It's related. It's about the same deal.
It's about the same deal, and it was a bit longer. It was longer than a 20-minute derail. It was probably a good 2-day derail. Where I actually at the end was like, I think we just resurrected this deal. It was we brought it back from the dead. One of our partners, actually, I was talking to him when things like all kind of came back to life and the deal got back on track and everything was happy and good. And he was like, you want to know what color I'm wearing? I was like, what color are you wearing? He's like, black. I was like, because you thought the deal was dead? He's like, I was prepared.
It was mourning.
Yeah, he was like, I was already mourning. And I was like, dude, like, have some faith. But anyways, it was a big logic and reason learning experience for us. Because, again, much like today, emotions got really heightened during it. And I think
there not only were emotions heightened, but there was no logic and reason to start.
Yes.
There was no logic about this. It was pure emotion.
Yes. And I think if everybody had taken a second, stepped back, really thought about like what was actually going on, it could have been a very quick fix. Because in the end, it was a very quick fix. But because there was so much emotion before we actually got to that final decision, things were really tough.
Yeah.
So what happened, the kind of the high level of what happened, our 24 unit that we are still on track for closing despite some derails, we needed an extension on the closing date. So we were a couple of days before closing.
And this was just because of lawyer issues
there was
and lenders and lawyers and
lenders and lawyers.
Yeah.
Lenders and lawyers on closing. And I think it's not uncommon to have some lawyer lender kind of issues or delays, we'll call them. It wasn't even really issues, it was delays when you're getting close to closing. But we ended up having to ask for an extension on the closing date. And I think fair enough, right? The sellers are getting ready to have everything finalized. And when they heard that we needed the extension, I think fair enough, they got a little nervous.
They freaked out.
Yeah, they got nervous. And to I guess set the stage, we've had a lot of extensions for this deal for various reasons on both sides. So fair enough. We are in that final stretch. We have the lawyer issues. We needed the extension. And the sellers kind of, again, emotionally backed up. And they're like, whoa, like, are you guys, I'm assuming in their mind, it was like, are you guys still going to be able to close on this deal?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Right? So emotions were heightened on their side, and they came back to us with a request. Now I won't go into what the request was, but it was a substantial request that there wasn't really logic and reason that we could attach to it. And it was a good chunk of money, basically, that they wanted for the extension, which again, like having some sort of compensation on extensions isn't abnormal. But it was more than what we were expecting.
Yeah, normally when you're getting some sort of compensation, it's logical. There's a reason behind it. We need compensation because of extra interest charges, or if you're buying a single family home, this happens all the time. People will book a moving truck because they're moving out of their house, right? And so, now I can't get a refund on my moving truck, so I need to be compensated for that. And because the buyer's problem or whatever, it was their fault, then the other side will end up paying for that. And it's a logical thing on why that sum of money or that request is made.
Yeah. So again, it was all very fair, but I think some emotions came into play. And when we heard that, obviously we got really emotional because we're like, we can't do that. That's
a crazy amount. We can't.
That's not going to work for us. What are we going to do if this is what they want? Like, the deal's not going to happen. And, we were basically, our partner was literally wearing black in preparation for this deal to die. So it was a good 24 hours of back and forth with like, what do we do? What do we do with the realtors, with the broker, with the lawyers, trying to like figure out how, like, do we keep this on track? Is this like a final request that like we have to do this request and that's it? Why? Like, what, like, where is this coming from?
Well, and that was my very first question, right?
Yeah.
Immediately, as soon as we heard this, me being a very logical person was just saying, where is that coming from? Like, what does what does that number represent? What is the reasoning for that number?
And I think a big problem that happened was we had these questions on our side. We were asking each other Jeff and I were like, why do they want this? Like, what is happening? But there wasn't really, the emotions were so high that we didn't really get that from the other side.
Well, we talked earlier about escalating emotions, right? When two sides are escalated on emotions, then it kind of snowballs from there. And in this case, we have an emotional seller, the realtors involved, the selling realtor and the buying realtor. involved. So those 3 people will actually, I guess 6 people or 7, yeah, 6, are all emotional, and so they're feeding off of each other, and we're over here like, okay, but wait, like, why?
Well, we were also emotional.
Well,
we got emotional
yes,
as
absolutely,
well.
but we were asking each other why, like, where is this coming from? And it took a long time to be able to have everybody step back and say, okay, why? Like, where is this coming from? What is the reason for this?
And again, this was like a 24-hour thing. And then when finally everybody, like Jeff said, emotions calmed a little bit, and we were able to communicate with the selling side and say, okay, what is it that you need? Where is this coming from? Where, like, obviously there's emotion coming from somewhere. Where is that stemming from? And what can we do to help, like, calm that and move this deal forward? And
because at the end of the day, we're still your buyers.
Yes. And as soon as that message got sent through, we got back where this was coming from, like what they were basically upset about. And as soon as we got that, we were like, okay, we can do, like, we can manage that. So we took that, put together basically a counter offer on what that compensation would look like, sent it over to them with the logic and reason of where that number came from. So very specifically, and again, I think we've talked about doing like love letters and that kind of stuff before. Broke down the calculation on where that number came from, why we came to that conclusion, why it made sense, sent that over. The sellers accepted it, and we moved on. And train was back on the tracks.
Yeah.
So it was this like over 24 hours of like super heightened emotion, thinking the deal was done. And then as soon as we were able to understand where this was coming from the other side, we were able to decrease our emotions, realize that that is a problem that we could solve, counter that, and everything was fine.
Yeah.
And it's back on track. Like, we are back heading towards closing. So I think that for us, that was a really important learning experience, because I know for myself anyways, I shouldn't say we, for myself, kind of let the emotions of everybody, all the circling, let that get to me. And as soon as I was able to actually get the information I needed, calm those emotions, do something that was based on logic and reason, send it back, problem was able to be solved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And it could have been solved in like probably as quickly as the one today was, in like 20 minutes.
That could have been one conversation. But again, while emotions are high, there's no logic. People aren't thinking logically, so it's really, really difficult.
Yeah. So learning experience, it happened. That's what this is all about. All of these learning experiences.
And we talk about that a lot. We've talked about love letters and stuff before. And if you're not familiar with what that is, stay tuned for the end of the video, because that's little segue into the announcement that we have.
Yeah. And I think bridging that over into the negotiation piece as well. We've heard a lot of different approaches to how to negotiate deals. We've heard things that have made us some things that we aren't comfortable with as far as negotiating goes.
Yeah, some cringy type tactics that some people will use.
Yeah. And what we have found the most successful so far is actually using logic and reason. So they're not tactics, right? Like, it's not like you're trying to pull a fast one on anybody. You're not trying to pull the sheets over anybody and make them, I don't know, think one way and you're doing another thing.
Yeah, it's not manipulation. It's
I mean, there is like
logical.
There is influence that comes with it, and I think a big part of that influence
and motivation, and manipulation are very, very different.
Yes. And but again, it comes from the logic and reason piece. And that's where we have found most of our negotiation success is actually from, like I said, not trying to trick anybody, but actually sitting down with somebody and saying, this this is what this building or property is worth. I've run the numbers. I can show you the numbers. Like
transparency is a big part of showing your logic and reason to somebody, is being transparent with how you're looking at the deal, essentially.
Like I've shown when I'm doing negotiations, I've shown people like, these are the numbers that I'm working with because these are the numbers that I was given. This is what this calculation looks like. I can break down the calculation for you. There's nothing, like, I'm not hiding anything, but this is why I need this to be this way because of what I've laid out very clearly on the table. And that's actually, I think, been our most successful strategy so far as negotiating goes. Yeah. So, I don't be...
Works better than walking into the building and saying, "Oh, this is ugly. This is ugly. This is ugly. Oh, this isn't worth it. What you're asking for it." Nobody's gonna like you when you do that.
Yeah, and likability is a huge piece of. I mean, we went back to like the whole influence thing, right? Like having the influence is a big part of negotiations, and if people don't like you, they're not going to want to work with you. So, and that is something that we were taught at one point that never really sat well with me because I'm also not a very good liar. So I have a very, again, emotions, very emotional face. I can't hide anything. So that never sat well with me. And as soon as we learned, like, become influential, have people like you, have people trust you, and use your logic and reason within that so that you have some oomph, some foundation to what you're actually showing. Yeah. And we've got...
You're not just throwing a lowball number at them. You're throwing a number at them that makes sense because of all of these reasons.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, they're not always going to accept it, but that's where we've seen the most of our success and where logic and reason has really shone through for us.
Yeah. Well, and it helps to really, truly understand the other side's motivations, I guess, and their reasons for, let's say, somebody's selling a property. You want to understand, why are they selling that property? What's their current situation? As much information as you can without being too nosy, I guess. But justify why you're asking those questions. And then it allows you to come to the table with better logic and reason that kind of creates a win-win for everybody. You're solving their problem, but you're also getting what you want out of it as well.
Yeah. And that's where we've talked about creativity as well. Creativity is so important. And that creativity blossoms from having the logic and reason to figure out what everybody needs and what actually makes sense for the deal. And a lot of that comes from your discovery with whoever you're negotiating with. And again, it's not using it against them. Like you're gaining this information, yes, to create the right deal, but you're not just like, I don't know, people are always like, they want to keep their cards so close because they think that if they show a card, then, all hell breaks loose, the negotiation gets turned on them because someone's going to use those cards. But
in reality, if you start showing cards, then people start to trust you more, right? Because now you're being transparent.
Yeah, I think there is still some there's some, you gotta still play it a little bit.
There's definitely finesse, absolutely.
Yeah. But I think the more that you can discover from the other person and the more you're able to actually use the logic and reason to create a structure for a deal that makes sense for both parties, that's where you're going to get your best results, not by tricking them into doing something or tricking them into thinking something or whatever. And then if you do need to renegotiate down the line and you've used these tactics that are tricking them into doing something, it's not likely that they're going to play ball with your next negotiation. It's
like when you get into this web of lies and you have to keep digging your way out of it, right? It gets very, very difficult, and it doesn't flow. If it's not truthful, it's not going to be beneficial in the long run.
So I think overall, it's very beneficial to use logic and reason.
You have a really good example of using logic and reason, actually.
I do. And it actually comes at a really good time because Jeff and I just had our first wedding anniversary on the weekend. We made it a year.
Nailed it.
And I tell this story a lot.
That's why we had that is because I at one point proposed.
You did. And it took some finessing to get that proposal. And I used logic and reason on Jeff because I knew that was his love language, basically. I knew how his brain
Not my
worked.
love language, but yes, that's how I communicate best.
Yes. So Jeff obviously likes his logic and reason. And one of the things Jeff told me when we first started dating was that he wanted to have, like, at least be in the process of having kids by the time he turned 40. So I sat Jeff down one day, and knowing I knew his cards, right? Like, I knew he had his own timeline, and I had mine, and I had what I wanted. So
which was marriage.
Yes. So I sat him down, and I was like, okay, so I need you to understand that I would like to get married before I have kids. And that is mostly because I didn't want to worry about children at the wedding. And I also didn't want to be like pregnant at the wedding. Cause if you saw my dress, it was very fitted, and that was the style of dress I wanted. And there was no compromising on that. So this is why I wanted to make sure I was married before we had kids. So I kind of backed that up for him. I was like, okay, so 40 is in, I think it was like 3 years or something.
I must have been 37 when you said this.
Yeah. I was like, okay, so we are this many years away from you turning 40. I was like, babies don't just pop out. It takes a while to cook them. So that brings us back so many months. And, it's not going to happen right away. So that brings us back so many more months. And, even if we start, trying right away, this might be TMI. I don't know, too much information, but it's pretty funny. So then I backed him up to that point. And I was like, okay, so...
You basically just said there's a sequence of events that need to happen before.
Yeah, but I broke it down to like the months. To like the months, almost to the weeks. And I was like, okay, wedding has to happen here. Weddings don't happen right away. They take like at least a year to plan, probably about a year and a half. And if you calculate all of those months, that's about 3 years. And you are 37. And then I just like...
You left me with that, and then probably a few months later.
And it worked. So again...
I was pretty confident she was going to say yes.
So again, this is where logic and reason, I mean, it's kind of a funny example, but it's where logic and reason can work in your favor even in everyday life, especially if you're talking to someone who is very much based on logic and reason. Mm-hmm. So funny example for you. Very fitting right now because we just had our anniversary. So yeah.
Nice.
Anyways, so logic and reason, super important. I think it's time.
I think we're done.
It's time to show our exciting news.
I don't
because
know. Do you guys want to see it? Do you guys want to see our exciting news? I don't know. I don't know if you guys are ready.
I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it. I know that much.
You're ready for it? All right.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's very fitting, actually, because of the logic and reason piece. Mm-hmm. We are going to be doing...
You want me to share it first? Yeah?
Yeah.
Hopefully this works. Hopefully you guys see this.
We're doing an event!
We are doing an event.
I'm really excited about this. So this is like super early bird right now. We are going to be doing a talk with one of the wealth tours with Wealth Genius. And we are actually going to be doing a bit of a deeper dive into some of the stuff that we talked about today. So the plan is to talk mostly about like negotiations, influence, and
love letters.
Also using logic and reason and doing a deeper dive into some of the actual strategies that we use, not just like high level, this is the way we do it, a bit more into the actual strategies that we do. So we will be doing that October 18th. We're super excited. If you want to join us there, if you liked what we talked about today and want to go into a deeper dive, definitely check out this event. All you have to do is go to Eventbrite. The link we will post.
I'm putting it in the chat right now. I will also put it in the description on YouTube.
Okay. So it will be posted. Just follow that. You can see the orange get tickets button. Make sure you grab them. We're going to be spewing huge value. to help you guys negotiate at your top ability and using logic and reason within that. So $25, tons of value we're going to be spewing, and we can't wait to see you there. So make sure you get your tickets. Yeah. Otherwise, I think that's
it. I put the chat. I put the link in the Facebook chat. It will be in the chat on YouTube, or in the description on YouTube as well. But yeah, just go to that link, and there's a quick little get tickets button
if you
for
have
you
any questions, obviously,
just
feel free to message us. And that was our power lunch on logic and reason. As always, if you have a topic that you want to hear us talk about, please message us. Let us know. If it's not something that we are necessarily experts in, we can always bring somebody else on to chat with us about that topic. If you
want to be a guest on this power lunch as well and talk about your expertise, we would love to have you on. We're able to do that. So, yeah.
So I think that's that. Oh, if you know anybody else that you think this would be valuable for, please share it. It's going to be on my Facebook profile for...
Who knows? It'll be on YouTube. That's the important part. And so go subscribe to our YouTube, and you can actually watch it there. We're live on YouTube at the same time as Facebook, so you'll get notified if you ring that bell, as they say.
All right. I guess that's it for today, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Take care, guys.